sanitize the script for the N word, take all the parts that are uncomfortable or mean out of it. And as I sat watching, I was thinking, you know, if I didn't know any better, I would think slavery wasn't all that bad, you know. And so, as a person who enjoys history, and B, as an artist, I have an obligation to be honest on stage. You know, we teach in our company that acting in itself is basically a search for truth. And if the truth is that in the 19th century and the 17th century and the 18th century in America, certain people owned certain other people, if I'm doing a play set in those times, I'm not going to pretend that that wasn't the case so that someone won't feel uncomfortable having to hear certain words.
Okay. Let's talk about the certain words. Just give me the list. What are the words that we're most concerned about here?
Well, a lot of people don't care for the N word, which in this case, the character that, one of the central characters in the story is the runaway slave Jim. He's referred to as nigger by pretty much everybody who talks to him, including Huckleberry Finn, who's brought up to, that's just how they talk, and that's how these people are referred to. There's a scene in the play wherein Jim confides in Huck an incident where he he smacked his daughter and didn't realize that she was sick or something like that. And it's a very touching and sensitive scene. And Huck turns around and says to the audience, "It doesn't seem natural, but I guess Jim cares for his people as much as white folks do for their own." And the play has several moments like that where Huck is discovering, wait a minute, these people are human. And I never knew that.
Yeah.
So there's that word, and then there's a scene in the show where there's a slave woman and who has a daughter, and they're sold off separately from each other, and they come in screaming about it. And the guy that does it explains, well, sorry, you know, it's what's done's done, and he literally drags the child off stage, and it's a very tough scene to watch. And again, that's one that's almost always taken out because people just don't want to be confronted with you know, an honest portrayal of what life was like for certain people.
So in that scene, a young
black actress, a young child. She's dragged off stage, kicking and screaming.
And why do we need to see that?
Well, because I look at it like this: that is, it's how Mark Twain wrote it, and that is something that was real life for thousands, if not millions, of people in this country, in our past, and other places as well. And I just feel like, as an artist, and also as a descendant myself of American slaves, that I feel like it wouldn't be right for me to pretend that was other than what it really was.
The N-word, how does it strike you?
Well, for a lot of people, myself included, that is probably the ugliest and most offensive word in the English language, and I don't like to hear it. And in preparation for the show, I advise the kids, hey, you know, rehearse your lines at home. Don't walk around the campus with your script and reading this out, because this is a word that oftentimes evokes very passionate responses from people. But again, it's something that I've dealt with in my life. I recounted a story to some of the kids in the cast about the first time I remember hearing that word. And as a 5-year-old child, I was walking home from school and had some people drive by in a pickup truck and hurl a Slurpee at me, and it nailed me in the back, and I fell over, and I got hurt. And as they drove by, there were 2 grown men in the bed of the pickup truck, and one of them yelled that word at me, and I went home and you know, crying and bruised, and I said, what did I do? And my mother was like, oh, okay. We had to have that talk, and that was the first time that I understood that for some people, they don't like you because of what color you are.
So these schools that have pulled out and said, we're not coming, how did that strike you?
Well, at first I was sad, because I think that a lot of times adults underestimate the ability to understand and to cope with things that kids have. I think that if you take an opportunity to treat something like that as a teachable moment, rather than just being afraid that some parent somewhere might have an objection, that the kids, if given the permission to, can really deal with and can process that and do it in a way that's healthy and that they grow and learn from.
Is it disappointing though to know?
Yes, and so in one case where I spoke directly to the teacher, and what she explained to me was that one of her classes is mostly white and there's only one black student, and that she couldn't imagine having that black student sit with her class, and every time that word was said, she was worried that the other kids would look over at this child and that she'd be sitting there feeling like somehow she's a representative of her race and has to then answer for or respond to what she's hearing on stage, and that might be uncomfortable for her. And what I said was, well, maybe you're right, but those other kids are probably her friends, and don't sell them short, and don't assume that it's going to be something bad in the end, because kids learn from things if you let them.
Fair enough. All right. Is there? Well, let's read a couple questions there. Okay. Good job, Shaun. So Reed, I'll just cut to the chase here. You're the lead. You're dealing with this character Jim, and you're calling him the N-word, I guess, a lot. Does that make you uncomfortable?
Well, at first I was pretty uncomfortable because I got to thinking that this is a pretty serious word and I don't want to approach it in the wrong way. But as the show progressed, I started to realize that Huck wasn't doing anything wrong. Therefore, I shouldn't, when I'm playing Huck, be thinking that I'm doing anything wrong. Because back then, it was a word and it wasn't offensive back then. But look what it's become today. So it took a little bit of doing, but I just had to remind myself that it was not bad back then, and Huck wasn't doing anything wrong.
Shaun said kids learn if you challenge them. Have you learned from this?
Oh yes. I've learned so much about the hardships that slaves had to go through back then, and it's a lot worse than I thought it was before. It's been a huge growing experience for me as an actor and as a person.
I bet. So you didn't shy away from the real topics. You're using the N-word, and in the end, your walk away from that chunk of history is what?
I'm better off than I would ever be if we would have censored it, because I don't feel like I feel like we're really doing the right thing, because it would be doing a disservice to Mark Twain and his huge novel that he wrote, and it was history, and we can't rewrite it by censoring it and brainwashing all these people just to make it what they like to do.
And when you hear about students and their teachers saying, well, we're uncomfortable, we're not coming, how does that strike you?
Well, I feel like the teachers and the schools are kind of cheating their students, because it's not like they're never going to hear and learn about it. And I think it's a very good environment to learn about it while you're watching a play, and it's very powerful to do, and I don't feel like that's a good reason not to come.
Well said. Anything else you'd like to add?
Come see the show.
Good times. All right, maybe some setup shots, and then we'll substitute the teachers in.